Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Pete on Retreat. Today, we're going to get personal. Everybody, and welcome back to Pete on Retreat. If you like what you're watching, please subscribe, hit the like button, drop me a comment down below. So, several of you have been asking me about my particular story. How did I end up in Thailand? And today's the day we're finally going to get into it. It all started back in the 1970s. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. So how far back do I want to go with this? The year was 2010, and I was a manager at Trader Joe's. A good friend of mine, Annette, invited a whole bunch of people to go to Hawaii, and just a couple of us said yes. Me and a person I knew by the name of Scott that I had only met like maybe once or so. And so the three of us went. We had an amazing time. Oh, it was just a blast. The three of us got along really well. Just the chemistry was there to start a good travel group. The next year, we added our friend Susie to the group. We went to Puerto Rico, we went to Jamaica, we went to Costa Rica, we went back to Hawaii, this time to Maui. The first time we went to the Big Island. But then things were starting to change a bit. When it came to our 2013 trip, we were planning to go to Italy and to Germany, which we did do, but one of the members of our group had a new partner in their life, and it was still early in the relationship. We weren't really comfortable with the partner coming to Europe, so our friend pulled out of going to Europe, and I just went with Susie and Annette. While we were in Europe, Scott got engaged. This is good news, and it also showed that the dynamic of our four-person group was going to have to change, or it was going to end. At Scott's wedding, both Scott and myself had news about us moving to Texas. Scott moved to Dallas, and I moved to Austin. Our friend Susie had news too. Susie was expecting a baby. So our travel group was toast. The next 6 years flew by quickly. I bought a house. My mom passed away from cancer. I had a few relationships. None of them really worked out in the end. I got back into Dungeons and Dragons, but my traveling was limited to just going to see my friends in Colorado about every year, and headed back to California to see friends and family every other year or so. In late 2019, I began to plan trips for the next year. I was going to go to Chicago in February. I was going to go to Disney World in Florida in May. I was planning on going to Peru in November and doing some hiking. And then, boom. Yeah, I think most of you know what happened next. I did go to Chicago in February, and that was right when the pandemic was coming out. And when I came back, within a couple of weeks, the entire world had changed. Now, I said moving to Texas was a bit challenging. Running a grocery store at the start of the pandemic was challenging, and it was taxing. I'm very fortunate for the store I worked at. Our management team was fantastic and very supportive. Our customer base in downtown Austin was very supportive. For the first several weeks, we all thought we were going to get sick or die. We were over sanitizing, washing our hands constantly, and it was stressful. It was incredibly stressful. And then the months went on, and they went on, and they went on, and they went on. And that pandemic that we thought might only last a few months, or maybe a year, dragged on into 2021, and kept going, and it was just bizarre. I mean, I think for most of us, the world changed, and it changed a lot. And all those changes and having all those trips taken away from me in 2020 kind of changed my mindset a little bit. If the pandemic's taught me anything, It's taught me that you never know what's going to happen. Coming out of it, I embraced that idea. In late 2021, I began looking at trips abroad, and I started seeing this theme of affordability, which led me down this rabbit hole. I was still 6-7 years away from retiring. Everything was pretty much on track for me retiring somewhere around 55 to 57. After looking at these trips abroad, coming here to Asia and areas of Europe, I went down a new rabbit hole on retiring abroad. It was a brand new idea to me, something I had never considered before. And so late in 2021, I started looking into it more. I was also pretty burnt out at work, to be honest. I love working at Trader Joe's, and I might make a video about my experiences working at Trader Joe's. I'd been a manager for about 20 years and gone through COVID. I wasn't feeling as appreciated by the company as I was earlier in my career. I no longer desired for that next promotion. And during all of these realizations and contemplations, I was talking to a dear friend of mine in Austin, and she kept telling me I wasn't stuck, that I had choices. I had always felt pretty stuck in the job. Trader Joe's threw a lot of money at me early in my life and made it a job that felt like I couldn't walk away from. I now owned a home, I had responsibilities as an adult, and leaving my career just didn't seem like a good idea. My friend kept saying the same thing: you're not stuck, you've got options. And eventually it started hitting home with me. My friend's also quite a minimalist when it comes to her life. She does not own a lot of things, and over the years I ended up with a lot of stuff. I now owned a 5-bedroom house that was reasonably full, 2 living rooms and a game room and a band room and 2 guest rooms and an office. I've always been somewhat of a habitual collector, so I had acquired collections of all kinds of different things. Hats and shoes and sneakers, DVDs, CDs and comic books, band memorabilia, musical instruments, and last but not least, a whole crapload of Star Wars toys. I had a bunch of clothes, I had a ton of furniture, and talking to my friend and getting kind of jealous of her minimalistic lifestyle also snowballed into these whole thoughts of, what if I sold everything and moved abroad? Once that idea was in my head, I started to do some more heavy research. I started looking into, where do expats live? What's an expat? How much is insurance abroad? Is it safe to live abroad? What's the healthcare like? What does it actually cost to live in another country? Another key factor in making this decision was the fact that the real estate market in the States had grown near exponentially over the last several years. I bought my house 7 years ago, and when I was looking at making this decision, my house had doubled in value. I was sitting on a bunch of equity that I could pull out and use to fund this crazy idea of retiring before 50 and moving abroad. And thoughts like that I call the brain worm. It's a thought, and it gets in your head, and once it's there, it just kind of goes around and keeps going, and it eats your brain until it's all you can think about. I was amazed at the realization that this was actually a possibility, that I could actually do this. I looked at moving to Texas as kind of a test jump for this big move. When I moved to Texas, I moved away from all of my family. I moved away from all of my friends. I didn't know anybody there. I signed up to move to Texas without ever seeing the city before, without ever being there. After moving to Austin, my dad and I became closer than we had ever been. We continued FaceTiming each other once every week. We made trips to go out and see each other. My dad fell in love with Austin, would come out to Austin every year. And so I realized, if I can move to Texas and be okay, maybe I can move somewhere else. The question now was, where? After doing some number crunching, I kind of came up with this pencil sketch. There was enough equity in my house to cover me for living abroad for 10 years. reasonably comfortable and with some money for traveling and going around and seeing things. So I came up with this pencil sketch of I'll start in Asia and be here for a few years and then probably move on to Europe and stay in Europe for a few years and then move on to Central America and hang out in Central America for a few years. I decided on coming to Asia first because I think it's going to be the cheapest of those regions for me to start. And if I'm able to live under budget here, it gives me more money to spend in those other areas. With Asia now set as my first region to move to, the question became, what country did I want to make home base in? I quickly narrowed my choice down to 3 countries: Vietnam, Malaysia, or Thailand. Within just a few days of doing research, Thailand became the obvious answer to me. There were several things, but a lot of it was just a feeling. It was calling to me almost. So I made my big decision and it was time to start letting people know. I had already had a trip planned to go to California in November. That was going to be my announcement tour to tell all my friends and family back home. A few weeks before that, I had a trip to Colorado, so that was my Tell My Friends in Colorado tour. With no surprise, they were incredibly supportive of me. My good friend Shelly had been to Thailand before. She had stories to tell me. She's got an uncle out here, I think in Phuket. I did tell my dad before coming out to California, and he did tell some of the family members out there, but I hadn't told anybody on my mom's side until I went. A lot of the family met up at my cousin's house in Norco. My cousin's got a beautiful ranch out there with a ton of animals. She's expecting right now. I just saw her for Thanksgiving and she's going to have her first child. So proud of her. Tierney, so proud of you. You and Michelle both. Amazing lives you've made for yourselves. Great job. My mom would be proud. Sorry, getting a little off topic there. I did tell you we're going to get a little personal here. So my family in California, 100% on board, incredibly supportive. Even my uncle, who, actually, my uncle's a big reason why any of this is possible at all. He's very dialed in when it comes to finances and he's smart with his money. I really thought he would tell me selling my house was a mistake, but he didn't. He was completely supportive and that meant a lot to me. Thank you. My uncle has a history as being a real estate lawyer, and when he came to buy my house in Austin, he gave me a couple pieces of advice. He said, buy in an established neighborhood that's at least 20 years old and buy as much house as you can afford. So that's what I did. I wasn't going to spend all that on a house. My plan was to buy a much smaller house and spend money traveling. But I listened to my uncle, and Pete, the single bachelor, bought a 5-bedroom house, 3,500 square feet, in a gorgeous neighborhood, a beautiful house, huge, 3 living areas, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, nice backyard, big, gorgeous shade trees. I absolutely loved my house, and I love selling my house even more. So it's late 2021, I've made my decision, I'm going to sell everything I have, I'm going to move to Thailand. My goal date is spring 2023. Now, I've been watching the Austin housing market like a hawk for months already, and I've been watching it with less effort than that for years leading up to it. The growth that we saw there in Austin was unbelievable, and even at that time, I felt unsustainable. I was also a bit concerned because I knew how much equity I had in my house, and I equated that to a certain monthly budget for this 10-year plan and still have some left over in reserves. And that money was there in my house. I knew it was there, but if something in the market had changed, then I would have to alter my plan. So I was also anxious to cash out when I could. And if you remember, the pandemic taught me one thing: you never know what's going to happen. I had this feeling something's going to be up with the housing market. 2022 starts, and we get a couple months into it, and the Fed start hiking interest rates. And I see the real estate market beginning to slow in my neighborhood. My dad makes his annual visit and comes back out to Austin. We hang out, we have an amazing time. We know it's probably our last time in Austin together, so it's kind of bittersweet, but it's also special. The end of a chapter in our kind of lives. And as soon as my dad flies back to Long Beach in the spring, I go into sell mode. I put so much stuff on Facebook Marketplace. I think it was the last weekend of June. The house goes on the market. It's listed at a pretty nice price, but my house was gorgeous and I had a good agent. And within 3 days of being on the market, we accepted a contract. And then I got COVID. So that took a whole week out of my planning. Came out of COVID and I had about a week left to get everything going. So there was a lot of long days and long nights in the house, just getting everything ready, making my plans. I'm not even at this point like trying to book anything in Thailand or anything. I'm trying to figure out what month I want to actually move there. The house sale goes through, no problem. I move into my apartment. eBay's fantastic. I briefly talked about why I made the decision to Thailand before. The healthcare is great here. There's plenty of retired people here. The country's got a lot to offer as far as culture, as far as history, as far as geographic climates. It's a nice central base for getting around Southeast Asia, and it's very affordable. But why Pattaya? Now, if you're not aware, Pattaya is kind of the Sin City of Thailand. There's a very large sex industry going on here, and that's not why I came here. Pattaya became a place that I was interested in going in and at least making my first home base because of a few reasons. One, it's a beach city. I grew up in beach cities as a kid. I lived in San Pedro for many, many years. I understand the benefits of that offshore breeze and how it cools things down. Another big part of it was the large expat community here. Yeah, I love traveling and I'm reasonably adventurous and I want to get out in the country and see real Thailand and not this crazy ass city that I'm living in right now. But with the large retired and expat and digital nomad communities here, I felt it was a good place for me to transition into Thai life. It's also a pretty big city and I could get just about anything I want here. If not, there's online shops and I could order from, but I enjoy being able to just go into the city and go shopping. And movies. I'm a huge movie fanatic. I love going to the movies. I love watching movies. And I read up on Pattaya, and Pattaya's got some really nice movie theaters. Really nice. See my other video about the porch. So with all those considerations made, I decided Pattaya would be my first home. Maybe I'd only be here for 3 or 6 months. Maybe I'll be here for a year. Maybe I'll move on to Chiang Mai. Maybe I'll move up to Pai. Maybe I'll spend some time at Phuket. I mean, I'm going to be traveling all around here, but Pratumnak really feels like home already, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be my central base for a while. So I think that pretty much covers my story. Please, if you have any more questions for me, drop them down in the comments below. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon for notifications, hit the like button. But it doesn't really matter because if none of you guys do any of that kind of stuff, I'm still going to be making these videos for my friends and family. This is Pete on Retreat, and I wish you were here.
Yeah.